It starts with a simple call. A neighbor looks out at the edge of a new subdivision in Robinson, Texas, and sees an orange glow deep in a patch of brush. It is spring. People have been clearing land, building homes, burning branches. A small fire does not seem unusual until it does. The caller tells the dispatcher they are not sure what they are seeing. It could be a brush fire or maybe just someone burning construction debris. Rain has been falling off and on all evening. Thunder rolls over the neighborhood as first responders begin to arrive. When officers walk into the field, the ground is soft beneath their boots, soaked with recent rain. The air smells like wet dirt and something harsher. An acrid smoke that does not quite match the way wood or brush normally burns. Up ahead, near the tree line, something is still on fire. At first, they cannot make it out. In the dark, the smoke and rain, it looks like a pile of logs or trash stuffed into a partially melted plastic bin. They move closer, fire extinguishers in hand, prepare to handle a routine call. Then one officer stops. He squints through the haze. What he thought was a piece of charred lumber has toes. He realizes he is looking at a human leg. In seconds, the mood in that field changes from routine to catastrophic. Radios crackle. A supervisor is called. Crime scene tape starts to go up. A canopy is erected as the rain intensifies. Hail pinging off the metal patrol cars. The fire is doused. But even in the dim light, it is obvious whoever this person was. Someone tried very hard to make them disappear. The body is burned beyond recognition. Curled inside what used to be a large plastic storage container, there is no wallet, no visible clothing, no face left intact. For now, this person is no name, but they're not alone. Just beyond the flicker of patrol car lights, a white shape paces back and forth at the edge of the field. Labradoodle, wet and trembling, his curly fur matted by rain. He barks at the officers with a kind of desperate intensity. Not aggressive, but insistent. He will not cross the yellow tape. He will not leave the field. Officers try to coax him closer. Come here, buddy. Come on. It is okay. He backs away, circles, barks again. He is terrified, but he is not leaving. They wonder if he belongs to a neighbor. They wonder if he wandered out from one of the new houses. They talk about whether he is trying to guard something or someone. They do not know, not yet, that when they come back in the morning, that same dog will be sitting in the exact spot where the burned body had been. They do not know that under his fur is a microchip with a single name, and they do not know that this panicked, devoted animal is about to expose a killer and speak for a woman who no longer can. This is the story of Mandy Rose Reynolds, her cousin, Joseph Daigneault, and a dog named Titan whose loyalty refused to burn away. Welcome to Broken Minds, where we explore how ordinary people lose control. If you are drawn to deep psychological true crime stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to Broken Minds and turn on notifications so you do not miss the moments where everything quietly falls apart. Tonight's story begins far from that burned field, in a small apartment in San Marcos, Texas. To understand how a body ends up inside a burning plastic container in a quiet Texas field, we have to rewind, not to the crime scene, not even to the day before, but to the life of the woman whose name will later be attached to that charred form. Her name is Mandy Rose Reynolds. Mandy was 26 years old. At an age when many people are still figuring out who they are, she was navigating a new chapter of her life thousands of miles from where she had grown up. Friends and family describe her as kind, creative, and generous. Someone who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with new friends. She had recently moved from Idaho to San Marcos, Texas, a college town with a lively, youthful energy. She wanted to be closer to her best friend, to start fresh, and to explore possibilities that had not existed in her old life. She talked about going back to school, maybe college. She was excited about the future. She was not rich. She was not famous. She was a daughter and a friend. An ordinary young woman rebuilding her life. And like a lot of people her age, she found love and stability not just in people, But in animals, Mandy had a white Labradoodle named Titan. If you have ever known a doodle, you probably know the type. Big, bouncy, and endlessly attached to their person. Titan's fur was a tangle of white curls, his eyes dark and expressive. He relied on Mandy for everything. Food, walks, warmth, affection. In return, he gave her unwavering companionship. You can imagine them in that San Marcos apartment. Mandy on the couch with her phone or a notebook. Titan stretched out her feet. Morning walks. Drives in her black Honda Accord. Titan's head out the window, ears flapping in the wind. At night. Maybe he lay just outside her bedroom door, a silent guardian she did not realize she would someday need. Mandy's heart did not stop at animals. It extended to people, especially people who were struggling. That is how her cousin, Joseph Daigneault, re-enters her life. Derek was family, the child of the same extended family tree. Someone who shows up in old photo albums. The kid you might have played with at reunions. But while Mandy was trying to build something stable, Derek's life had taken a very different path. By 29, Derek had what prosecutors would later call a career criminal record. According to courtroom testimony, he had at least 9 prior felony convictions: aggravated burglary, attempted aggravated robbery, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, criminal discharge of firearm at a residence, fleeing or attempting to elude law enforcement, drug possession, and criminal possession of a weapon by a felon. He had previously been in prison in Kansas. As a juvenile, he had even been involved in a shooting incident. By the time he reached out to Mandy, he was on felony probation, with an active warrant out for his arrest. On paper, that is the kind of background that would make most people back away. But families do not live on paper. They live in stories. He has had it rough. He is trying to change. He just needs another chance. When Derek reached out, it was not as a case file. It was as a cousin in trouble. He was in Wichita, Kansas. He told Mandy he needed help. He wanted to come to Texas. He needed a ride. He needed a place to stay, just for a little while, until he could get back on his feet. We do not know every word of their conversations. We do not know whether he framed it as a fresh start, a chance at change, or simply a refuge from legal trouble in Kansas. What we do know is this: Mandy said yes. She got her a car and drove from San Marcos all the way to Kansas to pick him up, then turned around and drove back with him. It is the kind of favor many people would hesitate to do even for a close friend. For Mandy, it was an act of trust and a hope. Back in Texas, she opened her San Marcos apartment to him. Derek stayed with her for about a month. During that time, they shared her living space, her car, her food, and eventually her safety. From the outside, if you were a neighbor, you might not see anything alarming. You would just see a young woman who had a relative staying with her for a while. Maybe you would notice Titan going in and out. Maybe you would see Derek taking the car. Nothing obviously explosive. But inside that apartment, the emotional balance was shifting. According to her father, Mandy began to feel afraid. In late March, she called her dad in Nevada. She told him that Derek frightened her. We do not have a full record of what triggered that fear, whether it was explosive anger, threats, controlling behavior, or just a sense that she could no longer predict what he might do. But fear alone is significant. Her father did not dismiss it. He did not tell her she was being dramatic. He told her to get away from Derek. He said he would come to Texas and help her pack up and move whenever she was ready. This was a turning point, or it could have been. For many people in similar situations, this is the hardest stage. When you know something is wrong, but you have not yet acted, you are mentally preparing to change your life. But physically, you are still sharing space with the person who scares you. For Mandy and her father, that conversation was the last time they ever spoke. In those final days of March and the beginning of April, Mandy was living in a fragile in-between. A new life she was trying to build, a dangerous cousin she had invited in, and a plan to leave that she had not yet carried out. Around her, the world looked ordinary. People went to work. Students went to class. The river in San Marcos rolled on. Titan still needed to be walked. Groceries still needed to be bought. But under the surface, Derek was approaching his own breaking point. A man with a long criminal record, living on borrowed freedom in a borrowed apartment, with access to a car, a gun, and a woman who was beginning to see him for who he really was. It is here in this quiet, deceptive normalcy that the story begins to turn. Before we move into the moment everything changes. If you value true crime stories that take the time to understand the human side, not just the headlines, consider subscribing to Broken Minds. Your support helps keep these stories thoughtful, detailed, and respectful. Because what happens next is where fear and opportunity collide. In true crime, people often want a single, simple explanation. One moment where everything snaps. But in many cases, the trigger is less like a single match and more like a pile of dried tinder that has been building up for years. In Derek's life, that tinder included a pattern of violence and law-breaking, an active warrant and probation, a sense of being cornered, and a growing dependence on someone who could walk away at any time. By early April 2023, Derek was living in Mandy's home, using her car, surrounded by her possessions, including a handgun that belonged to her grandmother, a Bersa 380. He had access not just to her space and property, but to her daily routines and her trust. We do not know exactly what conversation, if any, finally convinced him that Mandy was no longer his lifeline, but a threat to his freedom. It might have been her expressing fear. It might have been hints that she wanted him out, or mentions of her father's offer to help her move. It might have been nothing more than Derek's own paranoia and entitlement. What we do know is that on the morning of April 4th, 2023, Derek took the first clear, documented step towards something irreversible. At a Walmart in San Marcos, under flat fluorescent lighting, Derek walks in alone. The surveillance footage, later shown in court, captures him moving through the aisles with a cart. He is not shopping for food. He is not buying clothes. He picks up a large blue plastic storage tote, a shovel, a gas can. To someone watching the moment, he might look like a man about to clean out a garage or work on a backyard project. To investigators reconstructing the crime later, those three items form a chilling constellation. Containment, burial, fire. After paying, Derek pushes the cart into the parking lot. The cameras catch a glimpse of Mandy's black Honda Accord. Derek opens the trunk or back seat, loads the tote, the shovel, and the gas can into the car. Then, as he climbs into the driver's seat and begins to back out, the camera captures one more detail. In the passenger side window, a white, furry head pops up. Titan. His tongue is probably out. He might be panting happily, thinking they're going on a drive. He has no idea what has been loaded into the car with him. He has no way of knowing that his world is about to be ripped apart. What is missing from the footage is just as important as what is there. Mandy. She does not appear on the store video. She is not walking beside Derek. She is not visible inside the car. On that morning, as Derek buys the tools that will later be tied to the disposal of her body, she is already absent from a record. At some point during this window, the day before the body is discovered, Mandy is shot in the head with her grandmother's pistol. Investigators believe this likely happened in or around the San Marcos apartment she shared with Derek. The specific moment of the shooting remains uncertain. There are no known eyewitnesses. No neighbor has come forward describing a loud argument, followed by a gunshot. Sometimes, lethal violence happens in silence. A single, muffled shot in the confines of an apartment. A life ending between one heartbeat and the next. What we see clearly, though, is what comes after. Once Mandy is dead, Derek does not call emergency services. He does not alert her family. He does not claim it was an accident or an act of self-defense. He moves her body. He has a car, a newly purchased plastic storage tote big enough to hold an adult, a shovel, a gas can, and a gun. He also has her phone, her dog, and her entire life at his disposal. If you imagine him in that apartment, the picture is grim. Titan pacing anxiously, sensing something is wrong. Derek dragging or lifting Mandy's body into the blue container. The sound of plastic scraping against the floor. The smell of gasoline as he tests how to pour it without spilling too much. We do not need to visualize every detail to understand the psychology. This is not the behavior of someone overwhelmed by grief. This is the behavior of someone making logistical decisions. Where to put the body, how to transport it, where to hide it, how to destroy evidence, how to move forward as if she never existed. On April 5th, 2023, at about 6:25 in the evening, Mandy's phone pings a cell tower near Interstate 35 by San Marcos, heading north. The pings show a pattern, moving past Round Rock, Georgetown, Bruce Villetti, Lorena, and eventually into the Robinson area, just south of Waco. Around 9:07 that night, a Ring doorbell camera in a brand new subdivision on Heston Circle captures a dark sedan resembling Mandy's Honda Accord driving past. 13 minutes later, neighbors notice a fire in the open field behind their street. By this point, Mandy's body is likely already inside that plastic container, placed at the edge of the subdivision, surrounded by brush and trees. Gasoline has probably been poured. A flame has been lit. We cannot say what, if anything, Derek told Titan when he opened the car door in that field. Maybe the dog jumped out eagerly, thinking it was a chance to explore. Maybe he stayed close, confused by the smell of fuel and smoke. What we can say, supported by later testimony, is that when the flames took hold and when Derek eventually drove away into the night, Titan did not follow. He stayed. He stayed as the field burned. He stayed as strangers called for help. He stayed as officers arrived, their flashlights cutting through the smoke. While Derek moved on to his next calculation, Titan's entire world had shrunk to one terrible, scorched patch of land. The true trigger in this story is not just the moment the gun went off. It is the moment Derek decided that his cousin's life and her body were obstacles to be managed rather than a tragedy to be mourned. From there, every choice he made was about one thing: control. And yet, there is one thing he could not control: a loyal dog who refused to let her disappear. As we move into the crime scene itself, this is a good moment to pause. If you want more long-form stories that examine not just what people do, but why they do it, make sure you're subscribed to Broken Minds. New episodes dive into the psychology behind real cases every week. Now, let's go back to that field in Robinson and the night the fire was discovered. The crime itself unfolds in layers: the killing, the transport, the burning. But the part that investigators can see most clearly is the last act, the night of the fire. We return to April 5th, 2023, around 9 at night, in the new subdivision on Heston Circle in Robinson, Texas. This is a kind of neighborhood where people are just starting to move in. The houses are new. The yards are still growing in. The lots back up to a stretch of undeveloped field. Wild grass, small trees, and a line of taller trees forming a natural boundary. On a rainy night, you might hear the softest of cars on wet pavement. Maybe the murmur of a television from a living room. Maybe a dog barking behind the fence. What you do not expect to see is fire from their back windows and porches. A few residents notice an orange flicker in the field. At first, it could be someone burning brush or a controlled cleanup, but the glow builds. The smoke thickens. Something about it does not feel right. One neighbor calls in as a possible brush fire. The dispatcher asks questions, trying to determine if this is a simple call or something more serious. The caller mentions recent lightning, recent land clearing, and the uncertainty about what exactly is burning. In the minutes between that call and the arrival of first responders, Derek's physical part of the story in that field ends. He has driven Mandy's car into the area, parked out of sight of the main road, and dragged or carried the blue plastic storage tote from the car into the field. Inside the container is Mandy's body, folded to fit, lifeless. He uses the gas he bought to pour fuel over the container and the surrounding brush. He lights it. He waits long enough to make sure the flames catch, that the plastic begins to warp and melt, that smoke rises high enough to be seen from the subdivision, and then he leaves. His plan relies on several dangerous assumptions: that the fire will burn hot and long enough to destroy identifying features, that the location is remote enough, or the weather bad enough, that no one will interfere, that even if someone finds the body, they will not be able to quickly connect it back to him. But there is one factor he seems to have underestimated: Titan. When officers arrive, They navigate through rain and hail toward the fire source. The field is muddy and visibility is poor. In the half-dark, the burning tote looks at first like a debris pile. Then, closer in, it changes. A leg, a torso, the unmistakable shape of a human body, blackened and contorted, fused with melted plastic. The fire is extinguished with handheld extinguishers. The rain hisses against the remaining heat. Officers call for investigators, the fire department, for any agency they might need. Crime scene tape starts to block off the area. The field, moments ago just part of a blank new neighborhood, is now a crime scene. As they work, they become aware of another presence. A white dog, pacing and barking near the table. At first, he may look like just another neighborhood pet disturbed by commotion, but his behavior is different. He does not retreat to a porch or doorway. He does not go home and shoot away. He circles, returns, barks, tries to get closer. Some of the officers talk about him directly. Their voice is captured in reports and recollections. That dog sure is hanging around. Is that your person over there? They try to coax him in, but he keeps his distance. Torn between fear of strangers and an unshakable pull toward the burned area. At one point, someone suggests getting a chip scanner from the station. If this dog belongs to someone, he might tell them who. But the storm complicates everything. Lightning, hail, the need to document a fragile scene before nature erases it. Titan remains uncollected, a white shadow at the crime scene's edge. Eventually, as night turns to late night, the body is removed. The melted plastic container is documented and taken as evidence. A single .380 shell casing is found among the debris, blackened, but still intact enough to one day be matched to a weapon. The victim, whoever they are, leaves the field in a body bag. For a while, the only one who remains is Titan. He has watched everything. The fire, the strangers, the flashing lights, the removal of the only person his world revolved around. From a dog's perspective, none of this makes sense. People came, they took her, they left. So he does the only thing that makes sense to him. He comes back. By the next morning, Titan is no longer pacing in the shadows. A local man out searching for his own lost dog drives near the scene and notices a white Labradoodle. Titan is not wandering aimlessly. He is sitting in the exact spot where the burned container and Mandy's body had been. The man opens his car door. Titan jumps in. He does not know this man. He does not know where he is going. He only knows that for now, this is better than being alone in a field where everything he loved went wrong. The man calls animal control, who are already in the area looking for the dog officers could not catch the night before. Titan is turned over to them. They scan his microchip. A name appears in their database. Titan. And next to it, owner Mandy Rose Reynolds. Address San Marcos, Texas. At that moment, the burned body still has no legal identity. But thanks to Titan, detectives now have something they desperately needed. A name, a city, a starting point. This is where the crime in the field ends, and the investigation begins. If you are still with me at this point in the story, you are the kind of listener this channel is built for. Patient, thoughtful, and interested in the full picture. If you have not subscribed yet, this is a perfect moment to do it. It helps the channel grow, and it tells the platform that you want more in-depth stories like this. Now, let us see what happens when Titan's microchip speaks for Mandy, and the case widens across 2 states. Once Titan's microchip links him to Mandy Rose Reynolds of San Marcos, Texas, this is no longer simply a Jane Doe in a field. It is potentially the murder of a specific, traceable person. The question now is, where is Mandy? Robinson police reach out to the listed phone number. They leave a message about a found dog, not about a burned body. Not yet. They want to confirm who the owner is and how their dog ended up miles away from home, in the middle of a crime scene. Soon after, they get a call back. It is a woman's voice. She identifies herself as Mandy. On the surface, this should be the easiest part of the investigation. A simple reunification of a lost dog with his owner. But almost immediately, the call feels wrong. The woman on the phone describes Titan correctly. A white poodle retriever mix. She says she lives in San Marcos. She claims Titan ran off near Waco at some kind of gas station or rest area, sometime around midnight or 1 in the morning. When a detective tries to clarify details like what kind of gas station, which exit, whether she was staying in Waco or just passing through, her answers become vague and defensive. She cannot describe the location in any meaningful detail. She alternates between saying she was headed to Kansas, that her fiancé is in Wichita, that her phone plan is in someone else's name. The story feels stitched together, improvised, instead of sounding relieved or concerned about Titan. She grows increasingly irritated that she is being asked so many questions about a dog she just wants back. From the detective's perspective, it is puzzling. From ours, with hindsight, it is chilling. Why would a woman whose dog had been found safe, after supposedly running loose at night near a highway, be so unwilling to explain what happened? Why is she so impatient, so eager to end the call? Detective Marshall Perry has a gut feeling that something is off. But at this stage, he cannot reveal the full picture. On that first call, he does not yet say that Titan was found sitting near a burned body. He is just trying to build a timeline. How did your dog get from you to a crime scene? The woman who says she is Mandy is not interested in that question. She hangs up. Shortly afterward, Perry calls back. This time, he decides to be more direct. If she is Mandy, she deserves to know, and if she is not, her reaction may tell him something important. He calmly explains what they found in that field. A body, burned. Your dog was found near a deceased person at a crime scene, he tells her. He explains that this is why he has been asking so many questions. It is not about harassing her. It is about understanding how a small piece of this mystery, Titan, connects to the larger one, the burned woman. On the line, the woman reacts with what sounds like shock. She says, "Oh my God," repeatedly. She then pivots back to talking about how long Titan might have been outside, how terrible it is to think of what he's gone through. Her tone swings between performative distress and frustration. She still does not want to answer basic questions calmly. She says she does not have time for interrogation. She does not want to be treated like a criminal. At one point, she tells a detective not to call her again, threatening to have an attorney contact him. If you listen only to the words, you might hear a stressed woman overwhelmed by awful news. If you listen to the pattern, you hear something else. Deflection, irritation, vagueness, contradiction. We now know what the detective began to suspect. The person on the phone was not Mandy. It was Derek, impersonating her. Try to reclaim Titan, trying to get ahead of the story before the police could. While Robinson officers are dealing with the phone calls, they're also working the other end of the puzzle. They contact San Marcos police and ask them to check on Mandy at her listed address. San Marcos officers arrive at the apartment complex where the microchip lists her as living. They knock. No answer. Eventually, they get inside. What they find is not a young woman who stepped out for a minute. It is an apartment that looks like someone tried to erase her. The apartment is completely empty. Her possessions are gone. Clothes, furniture, personal items, all missing. There are no signs of an active life. No food in the fridge. No dishes in the sink. No half-finished laundry. Her black Honda Accord is also missing. In cases like this, detectives look for context. Did she move out in an orderly way? Was there a landlord notice? A change of address? Friends who knew she was leaving? Here, they have none of that. From the outside, it does not look like a planned, peaceful move. It looks like a vanishing act. And now, they have 3 disturbing facts. A burned body found 3 hours drive away in a field in Robinson. A dog registered to Mandy, found fiercely guarding that scene. An empty apartment in San Marcos and no sign of Mandy. The next step is to ask, if she is not home and she is not yet identified as the victim, where is her car? San Marcos police run Mandy's plate through databases and license plate readers. They get a hit. Her Honda Accord has been spotted not just near Waco, but in Wichita, Kansas, roughly 500 miles away. That location is not random. Wichita is Derek's home ground. Detectives in Texas alert authorities in Kansas. They share details. the license plate, the make and model of the car, and the potential connection to a homicide investigation. Wichita police are told to be on the lookout for Mandy's Accord. In parallel, investigators dig deeper into phone and digital records. Cell tower data from Mandy's phone, the same phone Derek likely took, shows a trajectory we described earlier, leaving San Marcos, moving north on Interstate 35, pinging towers near Robinson around the time of the fire, heading back south, stopping in Austin near Walgreens, returning to San Marcos, then traveling north again the following day, ultimately toward Kansas. Investigators also discover evidence of a prepaid phone purchase at a Cricket wireless store, a classic attempt to replace a traceable line with something more anonymous. Piece by piece, the picture sharpens. A woman has vanished. Her dog was left at the site where her body was burned. Her car and phone are now in the hands of a cousin with a long record and an active warrant. But investigators still need the one moment that will transform all of this from suspicion into arrest. They do not have to wait long. On April 8, 2023, Wichita officers spot Mandy's black Honda Accord on city streets. They move in for a stop. The driver, Derek, hits the gas. We are about to get to the chase, the crash, and the courtroom. Before we do, if this case has you thinking about how many small details, a Ring camera, a microchip dog, a prepaid phone, can decide whether a murder is solved, please consider subscribing to Broken Minds. It is a free way to support longer, deeper stories like this one. Now, let's follow that Honda Accord into Wichita. The chase through Wichita is intense. It lasts nearly 30 minutes, reaching speeds over 100 miles per hour as Derek weaves through traffic runs lights and pushes Mandy's Honda far beyond what it was built for. In dashcam footage described by local reporters, sirens wail as multiple units join pursuit. This is not a minor traffic offender. This is someone running like his life depends on it. At one point, Derek sideswipes a police cruiser. Finally, the Honda collides with another vehicle. The impact crumples metal and sprays debris across the road. Derek does not stay with the car. He runs. He sprints into a nearby grocery store, bursting through automatic doors and into aisles full of unsuspecting shoppers. Parents with children, people grabbing last-minute ingredients for dinner. Officers streaming after him, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Store staff scramble. Customers duck, grab their kids, or rush toward exits. Over the faint background music and beeping scanners, you can imagine the shouted warnings. Get down. Everybody out of the store. Police. In those frantic moments, Derek vanishes from sight, but he cannot vanish from reality. After a brief search, officers notice Ken slightly out of alignment on a bottom shelf. A faint sound, a movement. They aim their flashlights down and see him, lying on the bottom shelf in the canned goods aisle, trying to become part of the store's inventory. He is ordered out at gunpoint and taken into custody. Back at the crashed Honda, officers search the vehicle. Under the driver's seat floorboard, they find a .380 handgun, later identified as a pistol that belonged to Mandy's grandmother, ballistically matched to the shell casing in the burned container, and the bullet fragment extracted from Mandy's body during autopsy. It is as close to a smoking gun as forensic science allows. Kansas authorities prosecute Derek for the chase itself, fleeing, endangering others, and related crimes. He receives a sentence of just over 9 years on those charges. But that is only a prelude. Back in Texas, prosecutors in McLennan County, covering Robinson and Waco, prepare a far more serious case: the murder of Mandy Rose Reynolds. In November 2024, more than a year after a body was found burning in that field, Derek goes to trial in Waco's 19-state district court. The courtroom is formal, but the emotions beneath the surface are anything but. On one side, members of Mandy's family, her mother, her stepfather, her older brother, and others who have traveled to see justice done. On the other, Derek's family, his mother, his sister, his brother-in-law, both sides watching the same man, but through very different eyes. The trial lasts 4 days. Prosecutors Ryan Calvert and Alyssa Killen present an intricate web of evidence. Crime scene photographs from a field in Robinson, charred grass, melted plastic, the outline where Mandy's body was found. Calver apologizes to the jury in advance for the disturbing images they will see. The melted blue storage container, recovered as physical evidence, matched in size and color to the one Derek bought at Walmart. Testimony from firearms examiner John Knight, explaining how the .380 bullet fragment from Mandy's body and the shell casing found in the burned container both matched the Bersa .380 pistol found in the Honda's floorboard. Surveillance footage from Walmart in San Marcos, showing Derek purchasing the plastic tote, the shovel, and the gas can, and then loading them into Mandy's Honda, while Titan's white head pops up in the passenger window. Cell tower mapping, showing Mandy's phone traveling from San Marcos to the Robinson area on April 5th, back south through Austin, then back north again, ultimately toward Kansas, all while in Derek's possession. Testimony about the empty apartment in San Marcos. Evidence showing that after the murder, Derek had Mandy's car, Mandy's phone, Mandy's grandmother's gun, and, initially, Titan. They also called Detective Whitney Mathis, who walks the jury through how she tracked Mandy's phone and reconstructed Derek's movements. To Walmart, to Lowe's, up the highway, to Robinson, back to San Marcos, and finally north toward Wichita. Another powerful moment comes when Mandy's father, Randy Reynolds, testifies about his last conversations with his daughter, how she said she was afraid of Derek, how he had offered to come help her leave. Then there is Titan. Prosecutor Calver tells the jury about how Titan remained at the scene, barking frantically, refusing to leave the area where Mandy's body burned, how he was too skittish to catch it first, but returned to the scorched patch of earth the next morning and sat exactly where she had been, how that loyalty, combined with microchip, allowed them to finally put a name to the charred remains. On the defense side, attorney Jason Darling tells the jury not to be swayed by emotion. He suggests the state's case is heavy on what he calls dog and pony show theatrics and light on direct proof. He emphasizes that no one saw Derek pull the trigger. He questions why certain forensic tests were not performed, such as expanded DNA analysis on the gun or Derek's clothes. But under Texas law, a case does not have to rest on a single eyewitness or confession. Circumstantial evidence, when strong and consistent, can be enough. And in this case, the circumstances all point one way. Derek chooses not to testify. Jurors never hear his version of events from the stand. They do, however, hear about his criminal history in the punishment phase, 9 prior felony convictions, a prior shooting in Kansas, a pattern of escalating violent behavior. Prosecutor Ryan Calvert tells them that even if they knew nothing else about Derek other than what he did to Mandy, shooting her in the head, driving her body to McLennan County, and setting her on fire, that alone would have been enough to justify a life sentence. Once they hear his full record, the picture becomes even clearer. The jury is composed of 7 women and 5 men. They deliberate for roughly 35 to 40 minutes. When they return, the verdict is clear: guilty of murder. Because of his prior convictions, the charge is enhanced, raising his minimum possible sentence from 5 years to 15. In practice, the question in the punishment phase is not whether he will go to prison. It is for how long. The state asked for life. After hearing about his criminal past, his history of violence, his behavior in this case, the jury agrees. They sentenced Derek Joseph Daigneault to life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after 30 years. For Mandy's family, it is a measure of justice. It is not and can never be enough. After sentencing, they are given a chance to speak directly to Derek. Her mother talks about losing a daughter she loved, her stepfather about the hole left in their daily lives, her older brother about the anger and grief of outliving a younger sibling taken so suddenly and cruelly. As her brother speaks, Derek does something that shocks even a courtroom hardened by days of grim testimony. He starts talking back. He shouts accusations across the room, claiming his cousin, the one now speaking from the witness stand, committed some unrelated crime. The judge warns him to stop. Deputies move closer. Tension spills over into the gallery. Members of Derek's family, already emotional, react. Someone stands. Someone yells. In the chaos, Derek's brother-in-law is briefly handcuffed after allegedly taking a swing at someone on Mandy's side of the family. He is later released without charges. It is a sudden, messy eruption that shows just how deep the ruptures run when violence cuts through a family tree. Two sets of relatives, two different last names, bound now by a single act. As deputies lead Derek from the courtroom toward the jail, a local reporter asks if he wants to say anything. He does. He repeats his accusation against his cousin. Then when asked, "What about you?" a sentence that acknowledges reality without accepting responsibility. A statement of fact, not of remorse. Legally, the story concludes with a life sentence. Emotionally, it never really ends. Not for Mandy's family, not for Derek's, and not for a dog who waited in a burned field for a person who would never come back. We are about to shift into a more analytical lens, looking at Derek's behavior from a psychological perspective, and then reflecting on the warning signs and what we can learn. If you have found this deep dive valuable, please make sure you are subscribed to Broken Minds. It tells the platform these long-form stories are worth recommending, and it helps this community grow. Now, let us step back and examine what might have been going on inside Derek's mind. From a psychological lens, Derek's case does not look like a sudden explosion of madness. It looks like the end result of a long-developing pattern. We are not diagnosing him. We do not have full clinical records or direct evaluations, but we can talk about patterns and concepts that help frame what happened. First, there are Derek's long-standing behaviors. A history of aggravated burglary, assaults, weapons offenses, fleeing police, firing at a residence, time in prison, a warrant at the time of this crime. All of this suggests strong antisocial traits. People with these traits often show a persistent disregard for rules, a shallow sense of remorse, and a tendency to blame others for their actions. They may see people not as individuals with feelings and rights, but as tools or obstacles. When such a person is under pressure, like facing an active warrant and the possibility of going back to prison, their problem-solving can become extremely dangerous. Instead of asking, what is the right thing to do, their mind goes straight to, how do I get out of this? That is where we see the second layer, instrumental violence. Psychologists often distinguish between reactive violence and instrumental violence. Reactive violence is impulsive, emotional, triggered by anger or fear. It might look like a sudden fight or an outburst. Instrumental violence is planned, goal-directed, and used as a means to an end. Derek's actions after Mandy's death, buying a plastic container, a shovel, and a gas can, moving her body, burning it in another county, fleeing across state lines, abandoning her dog at the scene, are all consistent with instrumental, calculated violence. We do not know whether the exact moment of the shooting was reactive or not, but almost everything that follows points to a cold decision. Remove the problem, eliminate the evidence, and run. There's a third layer, and it is harder to talk about because it involved the person who tried to help him, exploiting empathy. Mandy was by all accounts kind and generous. She drove across multiple states to help him. She let him into her home. She shared her space, her car, and her daily life with him. To most people, that would inspire gratitude. To someone with deeply entrenched antisocial traits, it can signal opportunity. In families, we often see this pattern. One relative becomes the rescuer, the one who always bails someone out, the one who gives second and third chances, the one who believes, if I just support him enough, he will change. The danger is that, in some cases, the person they are rescuing does not want to change. They want comfort and cover and access. When Mandy later told her father she was afraid of Derek, it suggests she was waking up to this imbalance, realizing that the cousin she invited in was not just troubled, but truly dangerous. And then there is Titan. In animal behavior terms, Titan's actions are rooted in attachment. Dogs bond intensely with their primary person. When that bond is suddenly broken, especially in a traumatic way, they can show searching, waiting, and returning behaviors. Titan's refusal to leave the scene, his return to the exact spot where Mandy's body had been, his willingness to climb into a stranger's car only after waiting there. Psychologically, he became a symbol in this case, a symbol of loyalty in the face of betrayal, of innocence standing against deliberate harm, of a bond that persisted even after death. The contrast is stark. On one side, a man who used another person's kindness, then tried to erase her. On the other, a dog who would not let her be erased. Finally, a word about broken minds. When we say broken minds create broken lives, we are not saying Derek did not know what he was doing or that he was legally insane. His planning, his flight, his attempt to cover up the crime, all point to someone who understood the wrongfulness of his actions. What we are pointing to is a deeper fracture, a moral and empathic break. Somewhere between his first offense at 15 and the night he burned a body in a Texas field, Derek's sense of other people as fully human appears to have eroded. It was ever strong to begin with. When that kind of mindset meets access to weapons, vulnerable relatives, and a lifetime of getting away with harm, the potential for tragedy is enormous. Broken minds create broken lives. If you appreciate this kind of psychological breakdown and want more episodes that do not just tell what happened, but ask why it happened, make sure you're subscribed and consider leaving a comment about which aspect of this case stood out to you most. We will now look at the warning signs. The moments where, if life had gone differently, Mandy might still be here. When we look backward at a case like this, it is tempting to ask, how could no one see this coming? The reality is more complicated. Rarely is there a single missed sign. More often, there is a string of them, each one easy to rationalize in the moment, devastating in hindsight. First, Derek's record. He had a long, documented history of serious crime. Not just petty theft or vandalism, but aggravated burglary, violent assaults, firing at a residence. He had already shown, again and again, that he was willing to cross lines most people never even approach. In a vacuum, that record screams high risk. But families do not live in vacuums. They live in stories. He was young. He was with the wrong crowd. He is trying to do better now. We do not know exactly how much of Derek's record Mandy knew, but even if she knew a significant part of it, she may have believed, as many people do, that love and support could overcome a history like that she could be the one who finally helped him turn his life around. Second, there is Mandy's fear. That phone call to her father, where she said she was afraid of Derek, is crucial. Fear is not just an emotion, it is data. It is the body and mind working together to say, something here is not safe. Her father took that data seriously. He told her to get away from Derek. He offered concrete help to come to Texas, to help her move, to get her out. But like many people in danger situations, Mandy was in that fragile stage where awareness has arrived, but action has not fully caught up. She knew she needed to leave, but she was still physically living with him. Still sharing space and daily routines. Unfortunately, that window, the space between I need to go and I have gone, is often the most dangerous time of all. Third, the rapid entrenchment. In roughly a month, Derek went from being out of state to living in Mandy's apartment, using her car, having access to her possessions. When someone with violent history becomes that deeply embedded in your life that quickly, the power dynamic can shift in ways that make it very hard to say no, even when you feel unsafe. Fourth, the systemic gaps. On a broader scale, Derek's history raises questions about how the justice system handles repeat violent offenders. He had prior convictions. He had been in prison. He had an active warrant. And yet, he was free long enough and mobile enough to plan and commit another homicide. No system is perfect. Not every crime is preventable. But cases like this push us to ask hard questions about supervision, risk assessment, and how we weigh the danger posed by people with long, violent records. Finally, there is a human tendency to hope. Most of us do not want to believe that someone we care about, especially a family member, could kill us, or someone we love. We downplay threats. We explain away red flags. We choose optimism over fear because the alternative is unbearable. In so many tragedies like this, the warning signs were scattered across different people. A father who heard fear in his daughter's voice. A friend who may have noticed sudden isolation. A neighbor who saw a new, tense presence in her life. Each person may have had one piece of the puzzle, but unless those pieces are taken seriously and brought together, the full picture might not be seen until it is too late. The goal of looking back is not to assign more blame to the living. It is to prepare ourselves for the future. To say, when someone close to us says, I am scared of this person. We believe them. We act. We do not wait for proof that comes in the form of crime scene tape around a field. If you've ever had that gut feeling about someone in your life or in the life of someone you love, this is your reminder. You are not overreacting by paying attention to it. We are almost at the end of Mandy's story. In our last segment, I want to talk directly to you about what this case means and what it says about the minds that break and the minds that hold on. Before we do, I would like to gently invite you once more to subscribe to Broken Minds if you have not already. It helps sustain these in-depth reflective episodes, and it lets me know there's an audience that values this level of detail and care. Now, let us step back and reflect. So, after everything we have walked through, we return to the central questions. What broke Derek Daigneault? And what did it cost Mandy and everyone who loved her? Was this inevitable end point of a life spent pushing boundaries, testing systems, and choosing violence? Did his fear of going back to prison drive him to do the unthinkable? Or did something deeper fracture long before he ever set foot in Mandy's apartment, leaving him unable or unwilling to see her as a person instead of a problem? And then there is Titan, a dog who did not understand felony records or ballistic evidence or cross-jurisdictional cooperation. He understood only this. His person was gone. She was last in that field. That was where he needed to be. When officers tried to coax him away, he stayed as close as he could. When the body was taken, he came back to the exact spot where she had been. When a stranger opened a car door, he climbed in, not to move on, not to forget, but simply because staying there alone would not bring her back. In a story full of deception and destruction, his behavior is almost painfully pure. He did not solve the case in the human sense. Detectives, prosecutors, and forensic experts did that. But he was the bridge between a burned, nameless body and a young woman with a life, a family, and a future. Without Titan, this case might still have been solved, but it would almost certainly have taken longer. There would have been more nights of not knowing whose body was in that field. More days before Mandy's father learned the truth. More time for Derek to run, hide, and maybe hurt someone else. Titan did not know he was doing something heroic. He was just being a dog. And maybe that is what makes it so powerful. So I want to leave you with a few questions. When you hear about someone like Derek, do you see a monster or a chain of choices, experiences, and systemic failures that led someone to become capable of something monstrous? When you think of Mandy, do you see a victim or a young woman trying to help family whose kindness was used against her in the worst possible way? And what do you make of Titan? Not just as a symbol, but as a living, feeling creature who did the only thing he knew how to do, and in doing so, changed everything. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think this tragedy was preventable? Was there a moment, a boundary, a decision, a conversation, where someone could have pulled this story in a different direction? If stories like this make you question how fragile the human mind can be, and how quickly trust can turn to danger, I invite you to subscribe to Broken Minds, where we explore the hidden psychology behind real crimes and the quiet moments that lead up to unthinkable acts. New episodes go deeper than headlines, looking not just at what people do, but at the thoughts, fears, and fractures that push them there. Because in the end, the scariest monsters are often the ones inside us. And broken minds create broken lives. Thank you for listening.